The mining colony of Haven 6 was carved into the barren surface of a planet that never saw sunlight. With its permanent cloud cover, the world, officially named TX-7426, was a cold, desolate rock. Its sole value lay deep underground, where rich veins of tungsten and rare earth elements pulsed through the crust like buried treasure. But the miners here weren't adventurers, they were desperate people looking for a fresh start, running from something or seeking to provide for families back home. The colony housed 100 souls, living in interconnected modules that formed a web of humanity in an otherwise lifeless expanse. Dr. Elena Marsh adjusted her breathing mask as she stepped out of the medbay module into the sterile corridor. Lights flickered overhead, a sign of the constant strain the aging equipment endured. She'd been on Haven 6 for nearly 2 years, serving as the colony's chief medic. It wasn't her dream job, but it paid well enough to keep her brother in college back on Earth. And most days were predictable, treating the occasional broken limb, administering anti-radiation meds, or patching up cuts from careless mining equipment. But tonight, something was different. She'd been called to the mines an hour earlier. A group of workers had stumbled across something unusual in one of the deep shafts. The calm chatter had been vague but anxious, and that was never a good sign. As she reached the airlock to the transport bay, Elena saw Martin Reyes, the lead geologist, waiting for her. His face was pale, his usual steady demeanor replaced by a nervous energy. "Dr. Marsh," he said, waving her over. We need you to see this." I've never seen anything like it." "What is it?" she asked, strapping herself into the transport's passenger seat as Martin climbed in beside her. He hesitated, rubbing his temples as if searching for the right words. "It's not a mineral deposit, I'll tell you that much. But, it's alive." The transport rumbled as it descended into the bowels of the planet. Elena frowned. Alive? That didn't make sense. The scanners had shown no signs of native life on TX-7426 when the colony was established. Even microbial life was thought to be absent. The entire planet was as sterile as a lab dish. When they reached Shaft 12, a small group of miners was clustered near the mouth of a newly blasted tunnel. Their faces were lit by the glow of headlamps, and their movements were nervous, jumpy. Elena noticed the heavy atmosphere immediately. Normally, these men and women laughed and joked, even in the middle of grueling shifts. Tonight, they were silent. "Where is it?" she asked. One of the miners, a burly man named Tomas, pointed down the tunnel. "We didn't touch it. Just came across it when we broke through the wall. You'll see." Elena followed Martin into the darkness. The tunnel was rough, freshly blasted rock crunching underfoot. As they moved deeper, the air grew colder and damper. Then she saw it, a shimmering patch on the far wall, glistening in the beam of Martin's flashlight. It looked like a web of black and silver threads, pulsing faintly as if alive. "What the hell is that?" Elena whispered. Martin knelt near the substance, careful not to touch it. "It's organic," he said, his voice low. "Some kind of membrane. We've been scanning this place for years. How could we miss this?" Elena stepped closer, examining the strange material. The threads seemed to move, contracting and expanding like a living organism. She'd seen fungal colonies in deep caves back on Earth, but this was different. It had an intelligence to it, a purpose. "We need to seal this off and alert the director," she said. "This could be hazardous." Martin nodded, but before they could turn back, one of the miners, a young woman named Kayla, stumbled into the tunnel, clutching her arm. "Kayla?" Elena rushed to her side. "What happened?" Kayla's breathing was labored, her face slick with sweat. She held out her arm, and Elena's stomach lurched. A thin, black tendril was burrowing under her skin, writhing just beneath the surface. The site was inflamed, oozing a viscous yellow fluid. It touched me," Kayla gasped. I didn't mean to. I slipped, and it just. Elena grabbed her medkit, applying a sterilizer around the wound. Stay still, she ordered. We'll get this out. But as she worked, the tendrils seemed to fight back, digging deeper into Kayla's flesh. The young woman screamed, her body convulsing. Elena looked to Martin, panic rising. We need to get her to the medbay now. The journey back to the surface was harrowing. Kayla's condition deteriorated rapidly, her skin turning a sickly gray. She muttered incoherently, her voice a guttural rasp. By the time they reached the medbay, she was unresponsive. Elena worked frantically, running scans and administering every antitoxin she had. But nothing stopped the spread. The tendrils were multiplying, branching out under Kayla's skin like invasive roots. It's taking over her central nervous system, Elena said, her voice shaking. I don't know how to stop it. Martin paced behind her. We need to quarantine the mine. No one goes back down there until we figure out what this is. But it was already too late. By morning, Kayla's body had transformed. Her limbs were elongated, her fingers tipped with sharp, black claws. Her eyes, once brown and human, were now pitch-black voids. When she awoke, it wasn't Kayla who looked back at them through the reinforced glass of the quarantine room. It was something else. She lunged at the glass, her movements unnaturally fast. Elena stumbled back, her heart pounding. The thing that had been Kayla let out a guttural roar, a sound that reverberated through the medbay. We need to warn the colony, Martin said, his face pale. This isn't an infection. It's an invasion. Elena nodded, her mind racing. She knew one thing for certain, whatever this parasite was, it wasn't done. And if they didn't act fast, Haven 6 would become a graveyard. The medbay became the epicenter of panic. News spread quickly through the colony, and soon, the modules were filled with whispers and fear. Elena and Martin convened with Director Lamb, a hard-nosed leader who prided herself on maintaining order. Lamb's expression remained stoic as Elena recounted the events. A quarantine isn't enough, Lamb said. If this spreads, we're finished. How contained is it? For now, it's only in Kayla, Elena replied. But I've never seen anything like this. It's aggressive, intelligent. I don't know how it spreads, but we can't risk exposure. Lamb nodded. We'll seal off the medbay and the mines. No one in or out until further notice. Dr. Marsh, I want you focused on finding out what we're dealing with. Reyes, I need a full analysis of that substance. We have to know what we're up against. The colony settled into an uneasy lockdown. Guards were posted at every module entrance, and non-essential personnel were confined to their quarters. Elena worked tirelessly, running every test she could think of on the samples taken from Kayla. The parasite's biology defied explanation. Its cells were unlike anything she'd seen, rapidly dividing and adapting to every attempt to neutralize them. Worse, they seemed to communicate, reacting to her interventions as if they had a collective mind. Meanwhile, Martin and his team analyzed the substance from the mine. What they found was even more alarming. The threads weren't just organic, they were engineered. Microscopic structures within the material suggested an advanced design, as if the parasite had been created for a purpose. It's a weapon, Martin said, his voice grim. Or part of one. This isn't just some alien fungus. It was made. Elena's blood ran cold. Made by who? Or what? Martin replied. But that's not the worst of it. The material, it's spreading. The walls of the tunnel where we found it are now covered in the stuff. It's growing. Panic gripped the colony as more miners reported strange symptoms. Small abrasions became infected with black, writhing threads, and the victim's behavior grew erratic. The medbay filled with patients, each in various stages of transformation. Elena and her team fought to keep up, but it was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with a bucket. The infected began to display alarming new traits. They communicated with one another in guttural clicks and growls, coordinating their movements. When one escaped its restraints, it attacked with terrifying speed and precision, injuring 2 guards before being subdued. It took 3 bullets to bring it down. Lamb called an emergency meeting in the command center. The room was tense, the air thick with fear and exhaustion. "We're losing control," she said. "If we don't act now, there won't be a colony left to save." "We need to evacuate," one of the engineers said. "Get everyone off this planet and nuke the site from orbit." "Evacuation isn't an option," Lamb replied. "The transport ships can't accommodate everyone, and if this parasite gets off-world, we're looking at a galactic pandemic." Elena stepped forward. "There's one way to stop this. We need to destroy the source." "The hive? The mine?" Lamb asked. "Yes," Elena said. "If we can reach the heart of the infestation and destroy it, we might be able to stop the spread. But it won't be easy. The infected, they'll protect it." Lamb nodded. "Then we'll need a team. Volunteers only. This is a one-way mission." Silence filled the room. Then Martin stepped forward. "I'm in," he said. One by one, others followed. Guards, engineers, miners. They knew the odds, but there was no other choice. The survival of the colony, and perhaps humanity itself, depended on their success. As the team prepared for the descent into the mine, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The parasite was intelligent, adaptive. It wouldn't let them destroy it without a fight. But she pushed the fear aside. There was no turning back now. The descent was quiet, each member of the team lost in their own thoughts. They were equipped with flamethrowers, explosives, and makeshift protective suits designed to withstand the parasite's tendrils. Martin carried a scanning device, its monitor flickering with readings of the infestation's density. The deeper they went, the stronger the signals became. "It's everywhere," Martin whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the transport's engines. Elena checked her comms, ensuring the link to the command center was stable. Lamb's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Team Alpha, status?" "We're approaching the hive," Elena replied. "No casualties so far." "Good. Remember, your primary objective is to destroy the source. Get out if you can, but the mission comes first." The team disembarked at the bottom of the shaft, their headlamps cutting through the oppressive darkness. The walls of the tunnel pulsed with black and silver threads, alive with a sickening rhythm. The air was thick, almost viscous, carrying a faint metallic tang that made Elena's skin crawl. "Stay close," she said, her voice firm. "And for God's sake, don't touch anything." They moved in formation, their steps echoing in the cavernous space. The hive came into view, a sprawling mass of tendrils and pulsating nodes that covered the chamber like a living organism. It was massive, far larger than anyone had anticipated. In the center, a structure resembling a cocoon hung suspended, its surface glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. Tendrils radiated from it, embedded deep into the rock as if feeding on the planet itself. Elena's heart pounded as she examined the readings on her portable scanner. "This is it," she said. "The core." The tendrils reacted to their presence, writhing and shifting as if sensing their intent. A low, guttural sound echoed through the cavern, vibrating the walls. It wasn't just noise, it was communication. "They know we're here," Martin said, his grip tightening on his flamethrower. A sudden screech pierced the air, and from the shadows, figures emerged. Infected colonists, their bodies twisted and inhuman, crawled and lunged toward the team. Their movements were unnaturally fast, their blackened eyes glinting with malice. "Hold the line!" Elena shouted as the first wave attacked. The cavern erupted into chaos. Flamethrowers roared, bathing the infected in fire. Explosions echoed as makeshift grenades tore through the advancing horde. But for every creature they took down, 2 more seemed to appear. The hive was relentless, throwing everything it had at them. "We'll never make it like this," one of the guards yelled, blasting an infected with a shotgun. "We need to take out that cocoon." "Elena, cover me," Martin shouted, pulling a satchel of explosives from his pack. "I'll plant the charges." Elena nodded, firing at the oncoming creatures to clear a path. Martin sprinted toward the cocoon, dodging tendrils that lashed out like whips. He reached the base and began setting the charges, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. "Elena," he called, his voice urgent. "I need more time." "Hold on," she yelled, rallying the team to form a protective circle around him. The infected surged forward, their numbers overwhelming. One of the guards went down, screaming as tendrils wrapped around his legs and dragged him into the mass. The cocoon began to pulsate faster, its glow intensifying. From within, a shape stirred. Something was waking up. "Elena." Martin's voice was frantic. "It's done. But we need to go now." "Fall back," Elena shouted. The team retreated toward the transport, fighting every step of the way. The cocoon shuddered, cracks forming along its surface. A deafening roar filled the chamber as a massive, spider-like creature emerged, its body bristling with tendrils and armored plates. "It's protecting the hive," Martin yelled, firing at the creature. The rounds ricocheted off its carapace, barely slowing it down. Elena grabbed the detonator from Martin's hand. "Get to the transport. I'll draw it away." "What?" "No." Martin grabbed her arm. "We'll do it together." "There's no time." Elena pushed him toward the others. "Go." "That's an order." Martin hesitated, then nodded, his eyes filled with anguish. "Don't you dare die, Marsh." As the team retreated, Elena turned to face the monstrous creature. She fired her weapon, drawing its attention. It charged, its tendrils whipping through the air. She dodged and weaved, leading it away from the cocoon. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. When she was far enough, she activated the detonator. The explosion was deafening, a shockwave ripping through the cavern. The cocoon disintegrated in a brilliant flash of light, and the hive's tendrils convulsed violently before collapsing. The creature let out a horrific screech, its body crumpling as the life drained from it. Elena fell to her knees, the heat of the explosion washing over her. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the cavern began to shake. The hive's destruction had destabilized the mine. "Elena, the whole place is coming down." Martin's voice crackled over her calm, "Get out of there." She forced herself to her feet, running as the tunnel collapsed around her. Rocks fell, dust filled the air, and the ground buckled beneath her. She could see the transport in the distance, its lights a beacon of hope. The team was waiting, Martin standing at the ramp, yelling for her to hurry. With one final surge of strength, she dove onto the transport just as the tunnel collapsed completely behind her. The doors sealed, and the transport shot upward, carrying them to safety. When they reached the surface, the team emerged into the cold, sterile air of Haven 6. The colony was eerily quiet, the parasite's influence seemingly gone. Elena looked at Martin, exhaustion etched into her face. "Is it over?" he asked. "For now," she replied, staring at the horizon. "But whatever made that thing, it's still out there." The survivors of Haven 6 had won the battle, but Elena knew the war was far from over. The parasite was a warning, a glimpse of a far greater threat lurking in the depths of space. And one day, that threat would come for them. But when it did, they would be ready.